Let's flip the calendar back 10 months. The date is March 1st, 2024, and the Kings are gearing up for a game in Minnesota against the 1-seeded Timberwolves. In 58 games leading up to this point, they had a well below average defense, ranking 20th as they allowed just under 118 points every 100 possessions. So it was clear that offense was the identity of this team, but now they had to go up against the league's #1 defense without their leading scorer, as De'Aaron Fox was battling a knee injury. Starting in his place for just the 4th time in his NBA career was Keon Ellis, who recorded 4 steals and a block in just a brief 18 minutes of play, while Malik Monk carried the scoring load with 39 points and ultimately led them to a big overtime win. A game later, Fox returned for a home matchup against the struggling Bulls, and they actually lost by 4 points. The most interesting thing to me, though, was the fact that Keon Ellis didn't play a single minute. I think Coach Mike Brown realized his mistake, because in the next one against the Lakers, Ellis would come in for 14 minutes off the bench, where he was plus 17 in a 10-point win. The very next night against the Spurs, he saw a slight increase, 17 minutes of play, where he was plus 15 in a 2-point win. Then a few days after that, on March 12th, Keegan Murray was out with a tweaked ankle, so Ellis once again got an opportunity to start. He played 27 minutes, picked up 3 steals, and played near flawless defense on Damian Lillard as the Kings absolutely blitzed the Bucks by 35 points. The next night, it was Kevin Huerter who was out, meaning Ellis got his 3rd start of the month, and this time it was D'Angelo Russell who had to deal with him, scoring just 6 points on 2 of 9 shooting as the Kings walked out with a 13-point win. Clearly, they were starting to build some momentum, and by now, Ellis had played well enough to establish himself as a consistent part of the rotation. And on March 18th, when Kevin Huerter unfortunately had a season-ending injury, Keon Ellis would finish out the season as a full-time starter, where his impact on the team was impossible to miss. He had some big-time statement games, such as when he made 8 threes and scored 26 points on OKC's home floor, or when he played such perfect defense in the play-in game that he made Steph Curry a complete non-factor while recording 3 steals and 3 blocks in the process. It wasn't just flashes like these though. His impact was consistent and felt by the Kings at every level. Remember when I said they had the number 20 defense before that March 1st game in Minnesota? Well, over the next 24 games to finish out the season, they had the 4th best defense in the NBA, allowing less than 111 points every 100 possessions. And not only did he play a big role in transforming their defense, they didn't really skip a beat on offense by inserting him into the lineup. This is the type of complementary player every team dreams of. Someone who has enough of a skill set on offense to at least tread water or even add value on occasion while being a truly elite defender. So when they added DeRozan in the offseason, it felt like a foregone conclusion that he'd be the 5th starter, truly pulling that lineup together. But in this year's season opener against the Wolves, it became very clear that this was not the case. Kevin Huerter was back from injury, which also meant back in the starting lineup, while Ellis only played 11 minutes off the bench. Actually, it wasn't until the 5th game of the season that he'd get his first start, but that was a one-off, and after 3 starts to close out November, he didn't start in a single game throughout the entire month of December. It got to a point where he was nearly phased out of the rotation, having games in December with as little as 14, 13, 5, and even 2 minutes of playtime. And it's not like the Kings were performing. They went 5-8 during that month, and by December 27th found themselves 12th in the West with a record of 13-18. That night is when the report came out that they were parting ways with Mike Brown, and it really looked like the Kings were on the brink of a total collapse. And I can't make a concrete statement on whether or not Brown was deliberately not playing Ellis, but in 7 games since the firing, he started in 5 of them while averaging nearly 30 minutes a game. Of course, right on cue, they went 6-1, culminating in a double OT thriller where Ellis completely took over the game defensively. We're on season 2 now of undeniable evidence that great things happen when Keon Ellis is on the floor, so it begs the question, what exactly is he doing to impact the game at such a high level? Of course, it starts with the defense. For the Kings, his role is simple. Go out there and guard the opposing team's best backcourt creator. Against the Warriors, that means he's chasing Steph around all sorts of different off-ball screens. Against the Hawks, that means he's lining up with Trae Young at the point of attack and doing his best to contain the ball from getting anywhere near the paint. And against the Wolves, that means he has to move his feet with Anthony Edwards in isolation to not let him get that first step down on a drive. With all of that said though, when offenses run through bigger wings or more physical creators, those really aren't the types of players Ellis matches up well against. That's because he's one of the lightest players in the NBA. With a listed weight of 175 pounds, he's got a really skinny frame that allows him to be pushed around a bit. I think he especially struggled against Devin Booker, who consistently took him to the mid-post and just out-muscled him. That isn't to say he can't defend mid-post-ups though. Edwards too tried to utilize these spots on the floor, but Ellis was able to disrupt him with active hands and strong footwork. I know I said he isn't physically strong. However, he does have extremely long arms and sharp hands, so when he's relentlessly attacking the ball like this, any slight misstep by the offensive player will be taken advantage of. That's why I wanted to focus on someone with a refined post game like Booker, because when any regular wing turns their back to the basket, he actually does a pretty good job of preventing them from getting to their spots. It isn't just in the post where that combination of length and quick hands makes a difference. He's a nuisance all over the floor. Just look at the way his hands dominate this possession. Hero's looking to reject a screen with a crossover, but when Ellis reaches out an arm, he decides to pull back out and attack left. That doesn't lead to anything, so he resets the two-man game up top, only for Ellis to follow closely, take a swipe at the ball, and continue pursuing all the way up until he gets a steal. Even against a player like Shea, who basically never loses the ball, nobody is safe dribbling around Ellis, which is a big reason why he's currently 5th in the NBA with an average of nearly 2.5 steals every 75 possessions. For as good as his hands are though, his true superpower as a defensive player is his world-class lateral quickness. The benefit of having such a skinny frame is that he's ridiculously agile to the point where it feels like offensive players can almost never get the step. Even a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who seems impossible to contain in a straight line, has trouble getting by Keon's hip. The skinny frame again does have its drawbacks though. Yes, he's able to cut off just about every drive, but some guys are able to bump him off the spot and create separation. However, I think he has 2 big things working in his favor here. For one, his recovery speed is ridiculous, so even if he is bumped off his spot, he can usually get back to the ball and contest. Secondly, he still has those lightning quick hands, so in the event that he gets bumped or the ball is exposed at any point, he's able to swipe down and force a turnover. Basically what I'm getting at is the fact that against most perimeter-oriented wings, the guy is an absolute menace and a nightmare to deal with in isolation. Then as soon as his man tries to lose him with a screen, well, he can phase right through those like they don't even exist, sticking to his matchup like super glue. That's another benefit that comes with a really skinny frame. He's able to sneak over the top of screens without making contact, with the agility to stick with drives all the way to the rim. And that means he spends a lot of time chasing ball handlers, either from behind or while attached to their hip, where he can almost control their every move. One thing you'll often see him do when playing from a ball handler's hip is stick that long arm of his up in the air to limit potential passing angles. Not only is he making it harder to get the ball to the roller, he's completely eliminating the pass to the corner. As a result, he's able to force a lot of ball handlers into entering a score-only mode. Jaquez wants to get the ball to Bam here, but Keon shuts off the angle, and there's nowhere to go, so he's forced into a bad shot. In addition to shutting off passing lanes, he can also impact a player's ability to score in these spots due to a combination of length and impeccable timing. Here's a great example against Austin Reaves. He chases him over the top of a screen and gets stuck on his backside, but because of the threat he provides in rear pursuit, Reaves adjusts his body into a weird off-balance shot. Next time down the floor in the same game, you're going to see Reaves set up the pick and roll again, but this time Ellis gets clipped by the screen hard. Reaves thinks he has enough space to get to a floater, and it gets rejected. Now feels like a good time to mention that in addition to the steals, Ellis is averaging nearly 1.5 blocks every 75 possessions, which is second among guards behind just Derek White. So when he's playing at the point of attack, he's one of those guys that can really speed up the opposing offense, forcing ball handlers to turn the corner and rush to the paint. At least, that's when he's chasing these players over the top of screens, because another Keon Ellis staple is the way he likes to go under. This isn't anything unusual from an on-ball defender against weaker shooters, but because of his quickness, he's able to do it more effectively than just about anyone. One of the risks that comes with going under a screen is that some guys will either turn the corner to attack open space or try to reject the screen. Keon's just way too quick laterally to give up those angles though. And in the rare event that he does get beat in these spots, that just takes us right back to square one with him playing from the hip and dictating the possession. Because he's so great at both going under and over screens, that's turned him into an elite off-ball chaser. Just look at him on this play, staying with Ant as he uses the same screen twice, staying glued to the hip, and of course blocking a mid-range jumper. Against offenses that like to run through movement shooters, he's their go-to guy as a chaser, and he does an incredible job of staying attached around screens to make things a little bit more difficult. Here's a great one against James Harden, where he chases him over the top of a handoff, and when Harden tries to put him in jail, he recovers to get back in front, then takes a swipe at the ball. Like I said, he spends most of his time defending teams' primary guards. That could mean a pick and roll ball handler, that could mean an isolationist, that could mean a movement shooter, but the idea is that the Kings want him to go out there and do as much as he can to take away a primary source of offense. However, there are still instances where he finds himself switched off the ball or in a position to help, and his activity really stands out. Of course, you have the length and hands to just eviscerate passing lanes. What I like most though is his awareness and timing on rotations to pick up drives or tag rolls, and then the speed with which he recovers to the perimeter on closeouts. He isn't some game-changing team defender that offers a bunch of rim protection, but this definitely isn't a weakness. So when you look at the totality of his defensive game, it's pretty clear how he's able to impact the team's defense so much. When it comes to perimeter isolations, pick and rolls, or off-screen situations, he's among the very best in the league. When he's switched off the ball, he's still active, engaged, and aware as a team defender. I will say that the lack of real versatility as a man defender and the fact that he doesn't really do much work in the paint does prevent him from being some defensive player of the year, but within that role for the Kings, I do think he could earn some all-defensive buzz as long as he continues to play big minutes. As for the offense, I mentioned earlier that it's mostly about treading water. He's not the type of guy that's going to come in and take the team scoring to another level, but he's also not the type of guy that's going to come in and start bleeding value. Basically, all of his time on offense is spent doing one of two things. Because he forces a lot of turnovers and helps his team get stops, he does do a decent bit of running in transition. Then in the half court, he's just there to simply spot up and make the right decisions off the catch. More times than not, that decision is to shoot the ball, and we're now on a pretty large sample of him being a legitimately capable and reliable shooter. Since entering the league, he's attempted 300 three-pointers, and he's made an impressive 42% of them. No, there isn't much versatility, and a lot of them are open, but he's proven time and time again that he's not the type of guy defenses can abandon. And for the Kings, well, that's exactly what they need. They've already got one of the best playmaking bigs on the planet in Sabonis. They've already got not one, but two all-star caliber offensive cornerstones in Fox and DeRozan. They've got another guy in Malik Monk who's a near elite playmaker, so the creation aspect is pretty much covered. As long as you can spot up and hit shots, you'll have a place in that offense, and that's where Keon Ellis shines. So moving forward, I'd be shocked if he doesn't have a role as either a full-time starter or a 30-minute per game type of guy off the bench. Just look at the statistical profile he's starting to put together. If we exclude garbage time, in the last 2 seasons, the Kings have played over 1,500 minutes with Ellis on the floor, and in that time, they've produced a net rating of +7.5. On the inverse, they've played over 3,600 minutes without him, and that number drops all the way to -0.9. A quality outside shooter who can completely change games defensively is the type of player that any contender would be salivating at the prospect of acquiring. And as long as the Kings have him, they better continue to utilize him. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out the Hoop Venue podcast and my social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Ellis. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.